Hello and welcome back to TriggerSmart. In the last video, we covered if Charlie faked his death or not, or the squib theory. Now in this one, many of you have asked me to cover the Charlie Kirk exploding mic or device under his shirt theory. Now many channels have covered this, including Paramount Tactical last night with his guest, Mr. Bednarz, but the argument for it is never strong or backed by historic examples or data. It's just opinions and blurry footage or guesses. Now I didn't see any compelling evidence for it during that episode, but I did some digging, and I think what I found will at least be eye-opening and possibly quite surprising to many of you. Now, there are a few main things that I knew had to be in place in order to make this theory even close to plausible. First, the reaction of Charlie had to be taken into account. His decorticate posture, the neck wound, supposed vertebrae damage, and cavitation that has been caught on some cameras. Now, the cavitation possibly caused the necklace to be ejected, but an explosion from a device under a shirt could theoretically do the same thing. Second, the audio forensic engineers have claimed that there was a supersonic event of some sort. So many who don't buy the front shot theory have just added that maybe Tyler or someone else fired a missed shot, whether on purpose or not, to account for that sonic signature that was synced to the device under his shirt. Third, people have talked at length that Charlie had a wireless mic, audio pack, squib, or other device under his clothing. Peak Prosperity in his latest video also clearly showed the mic or something else attached to the front of his shirt on the right side. And fourth, if the device or the mic exploded on Charlie's right chest side, how did it create a hole on the left side of his neck? Let's get into it. Cavitation is the formation and collapse of vapor-filled bubbles in a liquid due to a rapid drop in pressure, causing damage through shock waves and microjets. So it just happens that the human body has a lot of liquid in it. And then I asked Google, can a small shaped charge cause cavitation in the human body? And it says yes. A shaped charge can cause cavitation in the human body through extreme negative pressures generated by the accompanying blast wave and hypervelocity jet. Now I asked it how much of a charge or how much explosive would be needed to make this happen, and of course it's not going to answer me. And it said that it cannot tell me how to make a bomb, which is not what I was asking it, but understandable. None of the ChatGPT or any of the tools will give me an answer to that. I'm pretty curious about that. If anyone knows, put it down in the comments. And this is not for nefarious reasons. This is because I want to know, could there be enough explosive in the mic or something similar to actually cause cavitation in a human body? And then it goes on to say, mechanisms of cavitation in this context, shaped charge jet. A shaped charge produces a focused high-velocity metal jet that penetrates targets. And we're going to see a visual representation of that here shortly. This hypervelocity penetration creates a significant temporary wound cavity in biological tissue, and then the other way is through the blast wave itself. The detonation also creates a powerful shock blast that travels through the body's tissues and fluids, particularly air-filled organs like the lungs, ears, and intestines, as well as cerebral spinal fluid. And that's going to be important when we start looking at the effects and why this might have caused certain things with what we saw. The subsequent collapse of cavitation bubbles releases significant energy, creating macrojets and local shockwaves that cause additional tissue damage, independent of the initial penetration. Now, this is a large shaped charge, but I want you to see this. So the shaped charge is actually here on the top, if you can see my mouse here. So it's pointing towards that little cone. It's like an upside down thing you would use to put oil into your vehicle. And the explosion happens inside of this cylinder, gets funneled, and then directed through this tube.
Wow. Gonna see what we've done.
And as you can see, this is a bigger one, very, very explosive, very powerful, but the whole point is that it went up, right? So it was directed upwards. And then here on ballistic high speed, we have another example. And in this case, they have a shaped charge going into a human analog. In this case, this is ballistic gel that has the simulated skull and stuff in it as well.
What? He's got an afro. Look, did it blow out his eyes?
Okay, so now you can see here, this one obviously is bigger than one that would be possibly inside of a device on him, but it gives you the idea that they can direct where the explosion goes and even have projectiles with that explosion, like a bullet. And then they can also, in this case, there's a very big pressure wave. That's the biggest takeaway from this video, is that there's a very powerful pressure wave that happens that we don't see with the naked eye.
And down his spine a little bit.
Right there.
I painted your concrete again,
Yep.
Tread.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
All right, so what I wanted to show there is there was obviously a lot of damage. So people are saying things like, if there was an explosion, especially right here on his shirt, then there's a pretty good chance that the shirt should be shredded it should be burnt. It was a white shirt, it'd be very obvious. Or the shirt would have a complete blowout with an explosion. Now, with a shaped charge, even with this one, you can see that it is not just a little directed blast that only goes one direction. It's a full explosion. It's just that the projectile or whatever thing they're trying to aim at gets hit with a majority of the force. All right, and then here we have SY simulations. And you can see as I play this through, the internal combustion happens, it explodes. And then what happens is this projectile takes its shape as it flies through the air. And I'll speed this up a little bit here. And you can see it basically forms a jacket like you would have on a bullet. And then that goes through and that will penetrate through the target. The size of that wound depends on how much that thing expands or contracts as it's being formed. And in a lot of cases, it's also made out of copper. And this is typically what cavitation looks like from a bullet or a projectile. But from an explosion, the cavitation would happen in a larger area. It wouldn't be as condensed or centralized as this. Can you see that? Huge expansion. And even an explosion. And that was from Fort Scott munitions. But as you can see in that one, there was a huge amount of expansion. And this has been shown, for example, in the Peak Prosperity video, where he shows the neck expanding. Granted, the ballistic gel is not a perfect one-to-one with human flesh. We have muscle, we have tendons, we have other connective tissue and fascia. So the gel would probably expand and be a little bit more active than what you would see in the actual human body. But it just shows you how much energy, that's the main thing that it shows, is how much energy is going into the human body when this happens. All right, so fair enough. People are going to say, how do you know that there's that happening? How do you know that's actually causing damage? Well, we have this paper here, Scientific Evidence for Hydrostatic Shock, which is another word for cavitation. That's the original scientific word. And this was done by Military Academy in New York, West Point. This paper reviews the scientific support for a ballistic pressure wave radiating outward. I highlighted a few key sections. It says he avoided the ambiguous use of the term shock because it can refer to either a kind of pressure wave associated with explosions and supersonic projectiles or to a medical condition in the body. So he's also talking about shock that you can get from some kind of trauma. But in this case, obviously, we're talking about the explosions and supersonic projectiles. Most people have only been talking about the projectiles, right? People are saying the 30-06. I know channels like Paramount Tactical, obviously he has significant weapons experience. He knows what he's talking about. So when it comes to rifle rounds and explosions and things, he's very familiar with this stuff. So I'm sure he knows, in addition to the supersonic projectiles like the 30-06 bullets that are loaded a certain way, there's also explosions that also cause pressure waves and can cause cavitation. And then we have here, other World War II era scientists noted remote pressure wave effects in the peripheral nerves. Now, you know, we saw that decorticate posture, and people said he had to have been shot in the brain or something directly. There was support for the idea of remote neural effects of ballistic pressure waves in the medical and scientific communities. This is back from 2010, Department of Physics, United States Military Academy. Then we have some parallels with the blast or explosions, which is the piece that I really want to focus on. A shock wave can be created when fluid is rapidly displaced by an explosive or a projectile. Blast and ballistic pressure waves have physical similarities. They also have similarities in how they cause neural effects in the brain. In tissue, both types of pressure waves have similar magnitudes, duration, and frequency characteristics. Both have been shown to cause damage in the area of the brain known as the hippocampus. It has been hypothesized that both can reach the brain from the thoracic cavity via major blood vessels. So they're saying that the shock wave or the pressure wave in this case, from an explosion or from the bullet, whatever happened, can travel through major blood vessels to other parts of the body. And in this case, they're saying the brain. They observed significantly reduced electric activity in the brain via EEG readings from pigs shot on the thigh. Now, in this case, they didn't even shoot it in the brain or in the upper body. They shot a pig in the leg, and it affected their EEG to their brain. So could that explain the decorticate posture that we're seeing? Whether it was from an explosion or the shot itself, if it was a bullet, could that have caused a pressure wave, like they're saying in this paper, to go to the brain and mess with his brain functionality and make him seize up as though he got shot in the brain and had damage directly to his brain. Remote pressure wave effects in the spine and internal organs. The brain is not the only organ subject to remote pressure wave effects. In a study of handgun injury, Sertivant found that pressure waves from a bullet impact the torso can reach the spine. Moreover, a focusing effect from concave surfaces can concentrate the pressure wave on the spinal cord, producing significant injury. This is consistent with other work showing remote spinal cord injuries from ballistic impacts. So basically what they're saying in this paper is that from a bullet or a projectile hitting the body and causing cavitation, or an explosion or explosive, shaped charges and things like that, causing an explosion, both can cause cavitation in the body. That cavitation can travel through blood vessels, which made me think of something. What about that injury? Do you think cavitation from an explosion in the chest? Now, again, this is just theories, right? I'm just exploring this idea. Based on what they're saying, could an explosion on his chest cause a pressure wave through the veins and arteries and cause it to, all that pressure to build up and come out of his neck? Like we saw everything kind of spill out. I don't know. What do you think? Put it down in the comments. So a lot of you have said in other videos that had nothing to do with this, that there's no way that this tiny little device, like this DJI mic, for example, there's no way that could have enough explosive to cause the issues or a shaped charge with a projectile. Well, I just want to point out that historically, you have this thing like this here. This was a Russian lipstick that fired a bullet. So something the size of a lipstick, this was decades ago, was firing a bullet out of it, and it was fatal, obviously at close distances. So this has been done for a long time. This is nothing new. And you have devices like this. It's a ring for women, and it's firing these little projectiles out of it. So, I mean, at close distance, this could be fatal. If someone took this and put it right up to your carotid or something and shot this little thing into it, I mean, theoretically, that could be fatal. So these were old spy gadgets. And then here we have the peak prosperity video, and I just wanted to show you the cavitation from here. Make sure you go check this one out. This was a very thorough video. They spent, I think, $10,000+ on this to test this theory out. But here's the high-speed cavitation that he shows.
Outline of his neck area and t-shirt neck area, neck size, and that same thing has just been transposed and moved down, and you can clearly see his neck is bulging.
So can you see that clearly? Just look at the size of that ring that he drew, that blue ring. And then he brought it down, the exact one. And you can see that on the back of it for sure, and on the front and side over here, you can see his tissue bulging. That's where that cavitation question comes in, because the biggest issue I would have with this theory of an exploding mic, especially like an exploding device, is that it would have to cause some kind of cavitation or be able to replicate this effect that we can see on this camera. And now, granted, this was not a high-speed camera that was recording this, and this just happened to be maybe a lucky catch in the frame rate that they were using, which I believe was 30. You would typically not see this. This happens so fast. Can an explosion cause that? That's the question. And based on the research paper and other things that I've looked at with you, it seems like it is possible. All right, so now this part again, credit to Peak Prosperity. This is where he shows the cavitation from the shot from the front. I believe in this case, they actually shoot down through the top, but they also do one from the front and it gets the same result. Watch this cavitation.
What we actually saw that day. So that's what it looks like in real speed. Wow, what happened? Hard to say. Let's watch that more slowly, frame by frame. First, second frame, third frame. What is even happening?
Now look at that. Look how... So anyone who says that cavitation couldn't have happened from a bullet shot, this clearly shows that it could, obviously in gel, not exact to body, but the hydrostatic shock happens in both because they're both fluid, they're both liquid. In the human body, it might be even more pronounced and a little bit more violent. But if you see here, I mean, the neck has gone up and stretched. You see all kinds of warping and stuff inside, and you can see bulging all throughout the t-shirt. And he repeated this a few different times, and the chain popped off and everything, just like we saw in the other videos. The question is, could this same type of thing happen with an explosive? And what that does now is bring us over to Cameron Vance. He has this video, Was It Really Charlie's Mic? I bought the same mic to test it. So he goes through the process that kind of like Peak Prosperity is doing with the 30-06 shot. He did the same thing with the mic. So this is shown an example. He's not using ballistic gel. This is a Bob dummy. So this isn't going to theoretically show the cavitation the same way that it might in a human analog. But just kind of look what happens. So he takes this stick and he holds the mic or whatever explosion he has in there, and he's holding it against the chest. Now, this isn't going to be a one-to-one for what would actually happen for many reasons. One being that you don't have a analog, so you don't have the ballistic gel. He's holding the explosion in place, so it's not free to move around and do what it would typically do if it was just like a mic on a magnet on his shirt. And then, of course, in this case, we don't know what the exact explosive amount is. He might say in the video, make sure you go check it out, but it's really interesting. So watch this explosion here.
Magnet. The lifeguard doesn't have any slide action.
So if you look at this here, he's showing that it's clearly dirty. So if there's any kind of explosive ammunition, if there's any kind of gunpowder or some other kind of accelerant or, explosive incendiary C4 or something, you're going to see some kind of residue, especially on a white shirt. Now, I'm sure there's things that could be a lot newer that we're not privy to that's military grade and top secret that maybe doesn't do all this. But from his example, you would clearly see that the shirt would be changing color and possibly even have a hole in it. In this case, that explosion, whatever it was not enough to create a hole, which is interesting. It didn't create a hole in the shirt, but it definitely left a mark on it. And you can see in this frame here, he's showing that there's clearly damage to that device. So I believe he used like a wireless go or something similar here, but you can see there's clearly damage to it. So we probably would have seen pieces of the microphone exploding away or falling down between his legs. If they have this, it'd be nice to see it because then we'd know pretty definitively if this was the device that caused the issue. And then, of course, we have the infamous Jimmy Dore, and he's showing the slow motion version of the shirt and what happens with it. And this is why a lot of people think that the explosion or the cavitation, the whole event, they believe started inside of his shirt.
So it looks, it's also a very, very compelling argument that it was his microphone pack underneath his shirt.
Basically, if you're seeing what I'm seeing and what he's probably seeing, it seems like everything originates around that device area. I mean, there's so many different things, so many different variables, you would never know exactly how that should look. But we can clearly see there's something happening under the shirt, and it seems to start there. So in some cases, it looks like it even starts there before you see the neck cavitation in some of these videos. Very interesting.
As the shockwave travels across his body, the magnetic clasp is flung across his body. In just a few frames, it disappears into his neck. The wound that appears is the same size as the clasp and displays flow patterns of a low velocity impact.
Okay, now that's where things get a little tricky, and that's where I kind of disagree with a lot of this theory. So if there was an explosion on the right side, just equal and opposite reaction, right? As if you've ever seen an explosion, you're going to, like a firecracker even, everything explodes away from that source. So if I take this DJI mic and I put that in the same position, let's put on this little magnet here. All right, so let's talk about this. So if I have the microphone here, you can clearly see it under my shirt, and you have this magnet, okay? So underneath, this explodes. What do you think the natural direction of this would be, of this magnet? Do you think the natural direction is going to be towards my neck? Or do you think it's going to be straight away from my body? Now, if it was a shape charge, could that change things a little bit? Possibly. But I would think an explosion here on this shirt is going to explode and knock this away from me, not up the shirt. Now, if you move this microphone over to the side and it blew up in this location, then maybe I could see it knocking this magnet across. But it just seems very strange to me that if this was even a shape charge, even if this was turned directly towards my neck and this blew up a shape charge, I don't see any reason why this magnet, which is decently strong, but there's no reason why this would go shoot across my body. I still think 100% it would just fly off. Like it'd just come off the shirt and fly away from me, regardless of shape charge or a regular charge that just blows up every direction. What do you guys think? And then, of course, we have the historical context of this. And we had a pretty recent event that happened that was caught publicly and televised.
60 Minutes got an inside look at how Israel pulled off one of the most daring and sophisticated intelligence operations.
So as you can see here, this is some sort of pager device. Now, I believe they did pagers and cell phones, and maybe other things as well. But they put explosives in here, and I'll show you how someone thinks they did it. But I think what they basically do is just replace part of the battery with explosive, and then when they get a certain frequency, a certain call, or some other type of remote detonation, then it explodes inside the device.
In history. It was the so-called pager plot in which pagers worn by members of the...
So now I want you to see the power of this. Again, this is like a CCTV or something inside this grocery store. Watch this. The guy in the white with this blue hat on. Boom. Look at that. So you see all this stuff explode away. There's no blood or gore here. But you see all this stuff explode away from him. That's extremely, extremely powerful. And this wasn't something that was just the size of a pager. So in this case, if Charlie had something this powerful, then we would have seen his shirt 100% rip and explode open and all that kind of stuff. And it might have knocked him back in his chair or something. But this just goes to show how powerful these can be. And he just drops. So he probably has, along with many of these people, severe injuries. People had fingers blown off, hands blown apart. Some people had the cell phone up by their face and it blew the jaw apart. It's very extremely, extremely destructive. So the amount of explosive that would have to be in these pagers and these cell phones, if that much was in this supposed mic theory, DJI mic or whatever the mic, whatever audio pack, whatever he had on, we would have seen significantly more. We would have seen his shirt blow up and rip apart. He would have been blown back. You know, you would have seen significantly more gore. You might have seen actually like, you know, blood and flesh from his chest and stuff come out. So I don't think it was this extreme, obviously, but could a smaller, more focused shape charge have enough damaging force to cause not only a projectile or something to go into his neck or through his neck, right? Because some people are like, how can the mic be here, but he has a hole on this side? Well, there's a couple of possibilities. Some are far-fetched. Some might make a little bit more sense. Depending on the angle of how he was sitting, if this were to fire a shape charge, theoretically, it could go through one part of his neck, maybe hit his spine, or depending on the angle, just be a straight shot from here through his neck and then come out here. So this theoretically could be an exit wound, which many people think it is. So in that theory, if this had a shape charge, it could theoretically go in this side of his neck, hit his spine, or not even hit his spine, and be at the right angle to just go straight through here and come out here. Okay? We don't see that in the video, but we also don't have a high frame rate. So something like that could be missed if it was moving that quick. And that could also theoretically itself cause some cavitation along with the explosion itself. To me, it still seems pretty unlikely, but very interesting. So here we have AI Tele, and they kind of give you their version of how they think maybe the pagers and stuff were happening, but this applies to basically anything that has a battery or anything that has enough space to put explosive inside of it.
Now let's consider a hypothetical scenario. Imagine you're looking at two identical batteries inside the pager. One battery would provide the necessary power for the device, while the other could potentially serve as an explosive.
So in this case, I believe that is what happened in some of those pagers and devices, is that they took it, they intercepted it, the shipment, they made modifications to it, and then they did something similar to this where part of the battery was taken away and it was replaced with explosive, or explosive was just added inside the device. So this has been done a lot throughout history. I was curious, I was like, because people say Israel, right? Well, I'm like, is it only Israel? And no, it's not. It's been used from a lot of different people. Concealed bombs in everyday objects. They've been used by intelligence agencies. They planted them in mundane objects. Mossad hid shape-charged bombs inside books for Saddam Hussein in 1970s. US CIA agents concealed an explosive device in a spare tire of a car to kill a Lebanese militant. There's these and many other cases. So as you go through here, I mean, this case is recorded as early as 1939. In that case, it was a Jewish militia, and the bomb was hidden on a donkey. And then you have Hamas with explosive booby traps on donkeys again. You have Mossad Israel putting it inside books, telephones, under hotel beds. You have the Bulgarian Secret Service with KGB support in London. Rice and pellets shot from umbrella guns. You have plastic explosives and radio cassettes from the Libyan intelligence. PET and explosive devices and Motorola cell phones back in 1996. That's Israel. You have Al-Qaeda, PET and explosives, which is one of the more common ones that are used for this kind of thing, in underwear. Now, that would be a horrible way to go. Have your junk burnt first. And then you have another one, Al-Qaeda printer cartridges, which are not very big. You have bombs concealed in mobile phones, bombs hidden inside decorative figurines. And then you have terrorist and insurgent attacks as well. So you have nail bombs hidden inside children's toy gun. That's just sick. Then you have TAT bomb hidden in passenger's shoe. Pipe bombs hidden in everyday items, teddy bears in a basket, Christmas box. I mean, basically anything can be turned into a bomb, in theory. And some of these things are very small. You have IEDs trapped in kids' toys. So as you can see from that list, this is something that's been done for a long time. They've had 80 years to perfect this type of technology and these type of attacks. And when I say they, it could be anyone. The US used it, Israel used it, Hamas used it. You have these random guerrillas and Islamic militant states, Al-Qaeda. I mean, it seems like it's been used kind of worldwide by many different groups. So they've had plenty of time to perfect something like this. And who knows what they have nowadays, right? So there was one more thing that I wanted to talk about, was line of sight. We talked about line of sight on all these different guns in these different roofs and locations, the cameras. But what about the microphone? If there was a mic over here and it exploded, could it theoretically go in on the opposite side of the neck? So one theory is that the explosion happened over here. It entered in through the neck, maybe hit the vertebrae or something else, and then came out over here. Maybe. Entry wounds a lot of times will close up, and they're very difficult to find in some cases. Now, I know this isn't strictly scientific, but I wanted to see if there's a line of sight from that mic location to the other side of my neck. So what I wanted to do, and I apologize if you can't hear me on the mic that well, is basically this is where the DJI mic or whatever the microphone, whatever the audio pack is, whatever device is here, from here to the opposite side of my neck, where Charlie actually had an entry wound or exit wound, whatever it is. And I want to see, is there a line of sight from that device? And I have my palm is completely against my chest, and I'm holding this metal rod. And this would theoretically be the projectile. So if the DJI mic is here, the metal pole's touching my chest. Yes, there's a line of sight. If I move it further over, now I'm starting to get into my Adam's apple a little bit. And if I lean back, it's still, I mean, it would basically go out the side, through the side of my neck. Unless it went in and hit that major muscle here and then curve back in or something, but that's very unlikely, especially at the velocities we're talking about to have to be able to create cavitation. So in this case, is it feasible that his mic somewhere in his chest, somewhere in this area, which I believe is where it was, is it feasible that if it exploded and shot a projectile up towards his neck, that it could go in the opposite side of his neck? Based on what I'm seeing, yeah. I mean, theoretically, it is possible. How likely is it that it would travel from the mic location, go across into this side of his neck, and not go out the side of his neck? I think that would be more likely the case. Or we would have seen more damage and stretching and rips and tears over on the side of the neck over here. But that just goes to show that in theory, sure, there is line of sight from that location to the opposite side of the neck. Because that's the biggest question that I had initially, is how the hell, if it explodes over here, is it going to cause issue over here? And based on that test, which is a straight line of sight from my chest where that mic would be up through this side of his neck without hitting my Adam's apple. Now remember, he's taller, so he has a longer, skinnier neck, so it might be even easier for it to come up and hit this location over here. So what do I think about all this? Do I think it's possible? Yes. Is it plausible? what's the probability of this? Probably extremely, extremely low, but I don't think it can be completely ruled out. Now, if I could have gotten more information, which online won't let me get, because if you type in certain things and ask certain questions, it just denies it and it won't give you information. So I don't know how much of an explosion would have to happen to cause that cavitation. That's the biggest thing that I don't know. But all the other little pieces, all the other questions that were out there, theoretically, yes, this could happen. All right, so what do you guys think? Do you think this is plausible? Let me know down in the comments. And as always, like, subscribe, and share this around. It feeds the algorithm. See you on the next one.